All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the May 22nd rendition of Earth Nouveau Hub. Today we have Melanie Kay from Star Body Earth talking about Vedic astrology.
Yeah.
And yeah, hi, everyone. Hi, Melanie.
Hi. Yeah, thank you, Tanya. Thanks for having me. It's really great to be here. I've come on here a couple of times to talk about various things, and this is one topic that I'm actually really starting to hone in and focus on in my practice and do more readings and get people into their current present moment timelines because that's what I feel Vedic astrology is about. So just to begin, I'll just share how I got connected to Vedic astrology. Just like many of us who are into anything spiritual, astrology is one of those puzzle pieces that give us clues about our soul path and our journey. So I started kind of doing my own self-study, learning more about in depth about the planets, about the constellations, and how my chart and the dynamics of my chart was really working with my soul psyche. And after I really feel like I got to a mastery level place with that and was really starting to see the chart come alive in terms of the geometries and to be able to read it intuitively, I went to Egypt for the first time actually. And so I had a big energy activation, what I call the diamond light body activation there. And immediately after being at the temple and the pyramids, I called my mom because I wanted my sister's chart. I wanted her birth chart and I wanted her birth time so I could look at her chart and ours together. And my mom said, "Oh, I just came across your birth certificate the other day. And do you know you were born at 11:55?" And I said, "No, I wasn't. I was born at 10:43. I was working off this 10:43 chart." And and so she was like, "No." I was like, "You need to take a picture of this." So I felt like in that moment, like I jumped a timeline. So then I started to really study and deepen into that. And it was maybe, I don't even know, about a month after that I said, "Okay, I'm going to jump into a community that's teaching astrology." And the very first video that he shared in his series was about tropical time versus sidereal time. So, tropical time is what most Western astrologers use, and it's based off of the sky when the spring equinox was directly in alignment with Aries and the beginning of the cycle of the wheel of constellations. So we call it like that precession of the equinoxes is the wheel of the constellations that continue to kind of move around this axis. And when the spring equinox hit 0 degrees Aries, that's when there was this big expansion of astrology in the world. So the Vedic astrologers actually at that time they um, they gave that technology to the Persian kings because they saw how useful this tool was as a predictive tool and a tool to use in mapping trends and especially like trends over the collective over time. So those Vedics distributed that technology to the Persian kings, and as we do with the telephone game, they gave it to the Romans and the Greeks over time. And no one, the Vedics didn't, or they didn't absorb, whether they gave it or they didn't absorb it, doesn't, nobody knows, but they didn't absorb the astronomy that needs to go with studying astrology. Because as we know now very clearly, and it's documented through science, that the precession of the equinoxes shifts every a degree about every 72 years. So right now, our spring equinox is actually happening in Pisces. We're 23 degrees off of that system that was used 2,500 years ago when that distribution of astrology and the technology of astrology spread. So when we're talking about tropical time, tropical and most Western astrologers still track tropical time. We're talking about a sky that's 2,500 years old. So when you look at your birth chart, you're looking at a birth chart that's the 2,500 years ago on your birth date, which is Now I'm coming to understand if you're studying that chart and if you're working from that blueprint, you're probably working with your ancestral karma. So that's kind of how and that's not coming from someone's book or text. That's just coming from my intuition based on the timeline leaping that I've done in my personal journey. So when you say, okay, I'm going to look at the sidereal time, which is the time of the now, it's the time when you look at your natal chart from the sidereal time perspective, you're looking at the sky where it actually was at your birth time in this timeline and present moment. So those placements of the dynamics between the planets, like the angles and all of that doesn't change. So those dynamics stay the same, but where the placements are in the sky of your planets and your fixed stars in your chart is 23 degrees off. So Vedic astrology has the marriage of the astrology and astronomy. So they're continuing to do that practice of tracking and aligning with that time. So then I had to study Vedic astrology. And the Vedic astrology goes even another layer deeper because they have divided the elliptical or the precession of the equinox or the constellation ring. Both three things are all the same. um, they've divided it into 27 segments. And each one of these segments has a fixed star in it. So, for example, like Aldebaran, the eye of the bull in Taurus, right? That is like one of the fixed stars. And those 27 divisions are called nakshatras, also known as lunar mansions. So each moon cycle, the moon goes through the whole entire elliptical. It takes about 28 days. Hello, 13 moon, 28 day, where we get that calendar system. It takes about 28 days for the moon to go completely around the elliptical. And so, yeah, the nakshatras are. And this is also another incredible like technology that translates to other natural time systems that I study, which is that each nakshatra is 13 degrees and 20 minutes in the elliptical, and 27 times 13 degrees and 20 minutes equals 360 degrees. So, and we all know the Mayan calendar and the Tolkien and, the Zolkeen, whatever you want to call it, that is based off the 1320 matrix and the 260 day system. So that's where I'm like, okay, bingo, this matches, this is aligned, and this is really brought down by adepts who are really tapped into the cosmos and we're bringing some stellar knowledge down onto the planet.
Yeah, it seems like there's so much wisdom in looking at things from this perspective, and just looking at the way that our collective culture is using the tropical or Western astrology. There's so many other things that are based on your birth time and date and calculated through that Western astrology perspective. We just did a deep dive on human design, and
Yes.
that human design is also looking at the Western or tropical, from a tropical
Which, well, that's what
astrological
I always
perspective.
kind of wondered about human design, right? Because after now I'm like such a I mean, I just really want to work with the Vedic system because I want to work with the time and the sky and the present moment now. So I'm sure that human design could translate if they just adjusted the tropical time to sidereal time, and then it could even be more accurate to people's. But everybody's system, everything kind of plays right now. We're all still alchemizing this harmony and the unity consciousness here on the planet. And so I just feel so strongly in my bones, in my being, that this is a center pole, the way that they're calculating their charts, and also some of the different relationships that the planets have with one another. All the mythologies and the Bhagavad Gita and the, Samad Mudra, like Mudara, like those are actual stories from the saga of the beginning of starting at Aries and going into Pisces. Like all the Star Trek saga, all the hero's journey sagas, it is the planetary movements that, and the lunar movement that passes through this bigger sky map. Really, it's a big journey. And, all the planets have their own incredible personalities and mythologies and lore around them. And so it's very deep. And the way that they speak to even, you know, the way that they teach it is very mathematical and like, okay, if you're looking at your Saturn in your chart, for example, you're going to look at its aspects, which are in different relationships, like 8 houses away, there's going to be an impact on that house from Saturn. So there's a lot of these kind of different things too that play based on how long it takes those planets to get around the sun. So you see, like there's a basis for all of these reasons why they're like, okay, when you look at Jupiter, you're going to look at 6 houses away from it, and then another 6 houses away from it. Those are the aspects of Jupiter. And we don't need to get into that. It's like so far advanced, but I'm only saying that because it's based off of the geometry in the sky that these planets are creating based off their cycles and their rhythms, right? So the more I study that, the more I'm really attuned to those cycles and those rhythms of the natural organic planetary movements. And it just becomes kind of intuitive and very in ground to, my earth walk.
I think it's so interesting when I was looking at, when we did that drop in on human design, I was looking at like the two different chart perspectives. So looking at the Vedic astrology and what my chart looked like with that, and then trying to sort of like say, okay, what would my birth date be if I was translating it into what my chart looks like from my Vedic astrology perspective? And one of the things I noticed is that when calculating the Vedic astrology, it looked like each different sign, like Aries or Taurus, had a different time span, like in the wheel, because it
Mm.
took like one sign a shorter time to like go through that. Like the alignment wasn't as wide. Like it took faster to get from like Aries to Taurus than it would from Taurus to Gemini. Like there was a wider, like more degrees on the wheel, it looked like.
There's something with, and I want to be clear about this too, because there's also this other system emerging called True Sky,
Mhm.
which is not so Vedic astrology. There's two, I mean, with anything, there's all these different camps about how to do it properly, right? Because what you're speaking to, and help me if I'm translating this correctly. For example, Virgo is massive in the sky compared to Cancer, for example. So in essence, if we were to really say like, okay, we're going through Virgo, it probably would be like more like 50 degrees, not 30, not the straight 30 degrees times 12, right? That makes the 360. But they, most astrologers have said, okay, no, we're just 30 degrees for each sign,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Then there's like this true sky perspective that's emerging right now, and they're incorporating the 13th constellation, Ophiuchus. And I don't play with that right now, but they're doing exactly that. They're actually mapping out the skies for exactly where that constellation spans. I think the beauty of the Vedic system of the nakshatra system, where they each take 13 degrees and 20 minutes of the elliptical, is it's very much based on the fixed stars,
Okay.
and it's nested within the constellations, but it's really based on fixed stars that kind of are always part of that. Like I said, Aldebaran is one, the twins in Aries is another, Castor and Pollux is another nakshatra, in Gemini. And like Antares, the heart of the scorpion is another nakshatra. And they're called different things, based on, that Sanskrit. But but it's really, it gives you kind of more in-depth flavor. Also, this is also amazing about the Vedic system. It's like, I don't have my mala on right now. I did earlier, but you know how many beads the mala has? It's
28,
108.
108.
108 beads are on a mala. So 27 times 4 is 108. And in each one of these nakshatras, there's 4 padas or 4 steps. And each one of those padas has a tone associated with it. And so you can go around the entire elliptical and make that 108. And that's kind of what you're doing if you're singing mantra with your mala. You're actually singing to the elliptical. And even when now, like I hear people, and I mean, this would be like a whole body of work, and I really hope somebody does this someday, um, is to actually cross-reference the tonal sounds of the stars, the star fixed stars, with star language, because it's incredible when people are channeling this star language and star frequency. You're actually like, it's almost like a calling card for the universe where you're going boop, 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 boop. And this is the synergy of that. Those stars can combine together. And that's
Mm.
really what your birth chart is too. It's like boop, 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 boop. Here I am. I'm coming through right now. This is the particular type of frequency that I'm being asked to deliver here on the planet.
One of the things that we noticed when we were in Egypt in the Valley of the Kings is that one of the tombs had, I should have put the picture as my background today, but one of the tombs had these clearly Indian people uh, with like a painting of different stars.
Mm,
So you could see, right, when you're looking at the paintings in the tombs and in the temples throughout Egypt, you can clearly see like what the Egyptian people, they had a very like stylized look to them. And then there were the people from Sudan, which had a very stylized look to them also that were represented. But this
hmm
was the only place in one of these tombs in the Valley of the King that we saw any any beings that really looked like they were from that area, that Indian area. And it was
mm.
all related to the star system. So I found that really interesting, really fascinating.
Oh, and there's actually a book, gosh, I can't remember, but I found it in India, talking about how all the Vedic information, right? Because the Rig Veda covers so much. It's part of why we have Ayurvedic medicine, it's the yoga, it's the philosophy behind yoga, it's astrology and astronomy, it's there's all these arms and branches to the Vedic teachings. And that is said to actually have come from beings from the North Pole when that was a fertile and verdant place.
Mm.
So, yeah, that there were travelers that came from those, and that they were very big, very luminescent beings that came and delivered that wisdom to the yogis.
Mm. So possibly coming from, ancestors from the inner earth to
Yeah,
bring forth that information.
yeah, there's so many possibilities there. But yeah, I feel that. I feel that
Mhm.
strongly.
Yeah, and when you did a reading for me, like my whole life, like looked at my astrological chart from the tropical perspective, because that's the information that was in the common, the common knowledge. There's all kinds of sites that you can look up your chart. So I would always say, oh, I look at my chart and compare it to this chart. I'm going to look at my chart and look at my family's chart or my husband's chart. And I've always been a Taurus with a Pisces moon and a Leo rising, and that's also described me like very well throughout the course of my life. But then Melanie gave me a Vedic astrology reading, and I'm an Aries with an Aquarius rising and a Cancer moon. And one of the things I thought really fascinating was that where my moon falls within Cancer is sort of like in, what do you call it, the bumblebee constellation or
Oh
something,
yeah,
where
Pushya. This is kind of like the beehive. It's like a star cluster. It's a nursery of stars, and yeah.
a nursery of stars,
Mm,
right? And so that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense to me
yeah,
that my
that's in the
rising sign
belly
would
of the
be,
crab, right?
yeah,
Pushya is, yeah, in the belly of the crab, and it's like and that's a really fertile place too, because let me just kind of make sure I'm getting this correct. It goes from Cancer, and then you go straight into Leo. You go straight into the lion's heart, where you get the alchemy of the kind of Christos energy in Leo.
mhm,
Um, yeah, there's there's more of the story there. Gosh, I know I'm still really, getting the kind of lore and the story merged, because I'm coming from I come from such a stellar reality. So like I'm really getting into the Indian storylines behind this, but it really is. It's a big tale, and it's a big tale of ascension and progression. I mean, I also believe that's like where the, progression of the major arcana comes from, is by, if you study the elliptical and the ring of the constellations and the story
mhm,
and the saga behind it, you get an ascension path.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. So just having a conversation about the hero's journey,
Hmm.
and of course there have been a lot of writings about the hero's journey, but being able to look at it from the perspective of the constellations and the precession of the equinoxes is really interesting. I've never heard anyone talking about it from that perspective.
Yeah, and similarly, like for example, my progression and my shift in my soul journey, when I went from tropical to sidereal time, or tropical to Vedic, or Western to Vedic astrology, I had this, I have this kind of crunched up place in my chart. They call it a stellium, where you have like more than one planet in one house. Or you have like, I think it's more than three. I have four planets in one house, and it was all in one sign. It was in Scorpio. So I had this like pride around this stellium in Scorpio, and I'm this underworld, like transformational goddess, witch, whatever you want to call it. And I really played that out, because that was what I was, tracking and kind of aligning myself with. And then when, I dialed the 23 degrees out, it's like all those planets went into Virgo in my 10th house, and your house has changed too. So before it was all Scorpio in my ninth house, and then now it's all in my 10th house, and it's all Virgo. And what am I doing but like organizing all of this information I've pulled from that play that I was having with all the taboo and all of the underworld stuff and all the like mystery things. I'm now putting it into some type of format and form to be able to teach. And I have Venus and Saturn exactly conjunct 11 degrees 33 minutes, like exact.
Mhm.
Which is all about like this grace and being able to teach, teach from the goddess place, but really hold structure and form and what I'm sharing. Like here I am in practice with that stellium and Virgo right now, just speaking about this kind of system of knowing and cross-referencing it with other systems of knowledge that are coming through and that I've been playing with and working with. So it is pretty wild, I'm now living that present moment karmic reality. So I encourage everybody, even if you're still, working with your Western chart, at least get your planets and your map of your Vedic chart, so that you can see where your progression is going to take you. Because I'm very, yeah, we talked about this right before we got on the call. Things are non-linear. So it's a weaving back and forth, but it gives you 2 points of reference to play with. And I think it's really great.
I think you had mentioned when we had a conversation about this before, is that the Western chart is like working on your karma, your ancestral karma, and then the Vedic or sidereal chart is working on your dharma. Like,
Yeah, it's all, well, here's what my thought about it. It's like, okay, tropical is working with your ancestral karma. Your present moment life path journey is really laid out in your Vedic astrology. So when we have the North Node and the South Node, also known as K2 and Rahu in the, sorry, I switched those. The South Node is kind of what you're bringing into this lifetime. The North Node is where you're headed towards. That's kind of in both systems of knowledge. We have those. In yeah, and in Vedic astrology, they call the South Node Ketu, which is the tail of the serpent, and the big story about the churning of the Milky Ocean, and the Asuras or the demons are on one side, and the Devas and the light beings are on the other side, and they're kind of churning the Milky Sea and like, creating this flow. At some point in time, I don't know, I don't remember who it is. He comes in and like slashes the snake, and they become two separate things. And they're, yeah, so the Rahu, the North Node, is kind of like what you're obsessed about, like without having a body. It's like the head without the body. It's like, I just want to kind of go towards this and go towards this and go towards this, because that's where your life path is direction. So there's almost like an obsession towards wherever that placement is in your chart. Whereas the tail of the snake or the body is like, what are you letting go of? What have you already learned? What did you already bring into this lifetime? And now you can just kind of let that go, because you're heading into the new energy of the polar opposite. So
mhm.
that's kind of, and then everything kind of contributes to that. So that's another principle. So when you're looking at your chart from the 2,500 years ago, yeah, that's your ancestral karma. This current present moment chart of stereo time Vedic astrology is looking at your karma in this present moment lifetime and your life path. And then I really pull in the galactic calendar and the Mayan cosmology, to talk about your dharma, because that key code of your
Mhm.
Mayan patterning is really what I consider. Yeah, that's your dharma. That's like what your essence is to be all the time. So you combine that with your North Node energy and the dynamics of your chart, and you got a pretty good map of where to be putting your intention and your energies.
Yeah, so I think it's yeah, really, really helpful to look at all these things and the way they work together, right, to inform what's going on in your life. Where are you headed? What is your path? What is your purpose? So lots of things that we can play with and work with.
Mm,
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
yeah. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm doing readings that are looking at your Vedic chart with your mind cosmology. And so I do a synergy of that. And so first session is always kind of, let's look at your natal chart. And then, we see where we can get to, and then we can cross-reference it with the current present moment chart of the now,
Mhm.
so you can see where your challenges are, where those things are kind of synergistically moving and shaking. So for example, like this whole eclipse that we just went through, there was a stellium on the complete opposite side of my stellium. So it
Mhm.
was like I had this incredible balance and duality actually going on. Sometimes those can be challenges, but I actually felt it was quite balancing to how I've been working with all that Virgo energy, because everything was kind of on the other side of the chart and Pisces for the eclipse. I still think all the planets are all super congested, but during that eclipse time, they were massively congested, all in Aries, Pisces, and Aquarius. But mostly it was like all sitting there in Pisces. So you can look at your chart and, yeah, comparison to the chart of the present moment now in the sky now, and see like, okay, what are the things going on? And oh, how does this make sense? It gives you a little more context for some of the personal challenges you're going through in your life. And we can give you timelines, very clear timelines about when those periods will start and end. And there's particular in Vedic astrology, they also give you a map of like what planets have influence when in your timeline. So you'll go through a period where like, Venus is really strong in your life stream. And so we'll look at Venus during those times and say, okay, what's going to get highlighted? Yeah, compare it to the chart of the present moment and say, like, these are the things that you can move through. And it can be pretty exacting. I mean, I still feel like I'm an amateur, even though I have way more knowledge than most. But yeah, the people that are masters at that, they just go so deep and they can really kind of point it to the to the T. There's a woman out there too who's pretty fun because she was similar in that she studied Western astrology first. Oh, that's the other thing in Vedic astrology, they don't really incorporate the outer planets. It was all what you could see with the visible eye, right?
Mhm.
And when there was, dark sky everywhere on the planet. But now that we, have these tools and we have these other planets that really show the ones that we can't see visibly are all planets that move very slowly through the elliptical. And so they represent generations, they represent, kind of groupings of souls that are working within, 10 years and um, cultural trends, like we can see that big global collective movements. And this woman, her name is Jodi Petrie. She has a website called galacticcenter.org and she has a whole school. She does daily YouTube videos and she really she loves looking at the cultural wave stuff. So she incorporates all the outer planets, but from a Vedic perspective is looking at the movements and the charts. And she's written heaps of books. She's real funny too. She's like from the South. So she has a drawl and she has like the big Texas hair. I mean, it's really fun. So like total character. But she likes to look at countries' birth charts and the birth charts of the leaders of those countries, and she looks at trends that are happening. So she has some predictive astrology going on around election time, and you know, we never really know until it happens, but because there's so
Mhm.
many factors at play, and people either, yeah, what they're doing with their timelines is always affecting the current present moment reality. So but she has some pretty cool info.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, do you have resources that you like to track this information, like a website or an app that you use?
Yeah, sure. So what I have done, Cosmic Insights is a classic Vedic astrology. I don't know if I can show you a chart or not, but I can pull it up at least.
Yeah,
The tricky,
I
the
can make
tricky,
you the co-host so you can share your screen if you like.
well,
Oh,
that's
you
okay.
got
I
your
can
phone, yeah.
just show you on my phone what a Vedic astrology chart looks like. It looks like this diamond pattern. And that can be confusing, but really the ascendant is just starting at the top instead of starting over here. Like a Western chart starts the ascendant here, or like when people look at their ascendant, they're like, okay, well, what is that? The ascendant is where the sun is coming up on the horizon at your time of birth. Okay, so that's like, or where the horizon line is in the elliptical at your time of birth. So in Western, the chart has it horizontal and it goes, interestingly enough, as if the sun, like the first four houses would be like going into the earth and then
Mhm.
coming out. So like where the 10th house is and that midheaven point, that's like where high noon would be if the sun was to be like in the middle of the sky during its light time.
Mhm.
So Vedic doesn't do it like that. They just start from the top like this and it goes around like this way. So but so that's just, I don't know. Because I started out reading a circular chart, I
Mhm.
like reading a circular chart better. So this is Cosmic Insights. That's kind of like the like creme de la creme of Vedic astrology apps, and that's where I get all my other information from. So like the nakshatras, I get the nakshatras from that. I get what I was telling you about before, which is the Mahadasha, like what your concentrated planet energy is. So, like I said, your birth timeline, you'll have a concentrated time where Venus is, it's like a 7-year cycle, and then Saturn has like an 18-year cycle, and So you go through these periods of your Mahadashas. So I get that information from Cosmic Insights. And then when I want to look at a chart, like this way with the circle way, oh, can you see it? Like just like a
Yeah, sort of.
normal
Yeah, yeah.
Western chart would look.
Hmm.
Um, I go to an app called Astro Gold, and Astro Gold has, if you go into their settings and look at their chart calculations, you can go to where it says Zodiac and choose Krishnamurti, and that's going to give you the sidereal time that's the closest to, I mean, it's within like minutes of what the Cosmic Insights calculations give you. So then I can look at the circle and how the angles are because I'm visual. And that's how I kind of decipher that piece of the puzzle. So I work with those two apps kind of and flip flop between them. I like I was before I got into the Vedic stuff, I was using time passages, and they have um a pretty beautiful uh kind of directory in there for learning. So you can learn about the houses, you can learn about the planets, you can learn about the signs, and I think they have a free version. So that's nice. Astro
And
Gold
and that's
is
an app also.
yeah, these are
Yeah.
all apps
Okay.
that I'm using. Yeah, but those are the three that I love and kind of circle around with, because if I want to look at somebody's ancestral chart, if their Western chart too, I'll go back to time passages and plug it in there and take a look.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like so much is clearing, right? You mentioned you're doing the cleanse right now. I think that so many things are clearing out and bobbing up to the surface, right?
Yeah.
For feeling and healing. And so when how do you recommend that people really start with this?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's nice to get a reading. I really do, from someone that already knows it, because I mean, I took years to like teach myself how to interpret and read this stuff. So,
Mhm.
if you have your just get a natal reading so that you can kind of see and get so you can look at what your dharma is, if you're on the right path now, and if you need to make some changes in your career. I think you're right. Like, so many things are coming up to be cleared, and people are realizing if they're not in their alignments with these kind of, you know, charts and the way that the plan and program of when you came in, if you're not aligned in that, um, you're going to be feeling it hard right now. So the best way, as I would think, if you have the resources, is to get a natal chart reading done. Let's see what kind of things that you can, small changes that you can make to get moving more towards that. And I'm not someone who recommends that. I just ask questions about, how do you think that, based off your life experience and what you have built already. I mean, we're all doing it in some way, but to bring these things to light and to really move with intention in the world, as this is my path. I know it's my path, and this is what I'm doing. It's just so confidence building. And it's so, yeah, when you can have some things that you're really sure about, it feels really good. So we're always going to have the mystery. It wouldn't be interesting if we didn't, but to have some things that we can ground into and say, okay, yes, this I don't have to worry about. I never have to doubt it. That's what's aligned for me. Feels good.
Yeah. Well, even to say, oh, wait, I'm looking at this alignment or that alignment and where this house is in this constellation. I think it can be really validating to be able to say, oh, okay, it makes sense why I've been thinking this way or feeling this way or heading in this direction.
Yeah. The other thing a Vedic astrology chart does, which is like nobody in Western is doing anything like this right now, is that as well, not as many people know, but as me and Tanya, when you're working with your mind calendar cosmology, when you're working with that galactic sign and seal, there's a way you don't get back around to the same sign and seal until your 52nd birthday, right? Your Syrian return. So you go through all these different kind of phases through that. And then you hit 52 and you're back to zero again with your Mayan cosmology. Well, guess what? That's just a couple years before your Saturn return, which is always a huge transformational time. And at that point in time, there's something called a destiny chart that you can look at. So this is another thing. So if you look at your Vedic astrology, you can actually go into a fractal chart from any one of your houses. So say you want to learn more about your career, your relationships, your home, you're going to go for career, you're going to go into a fractal D10 chart where it's actually taking that chart and dividing it again. And it's showing you another, like almost zoomed in perspective of your career. And then same with like relationships, you're going to go into your D7 chart. You're like, a house of relationships chart, and it can fractal into this other chart. If you want to look at home situation, go into your fourth house, fourth house chart. But when you turn 52 and in your Saturn return time, that 52 to 56 time, you go into your D9 chart, which is your destiny chart. And that is where your ripened karmic chart starts. So depending on your age, you grow out of that life path karma of your natal chart and you grow into this destiny chart, which becomes a whole new, maturing of your soul's path. And so I'm getting the chills right now. I mean, it's just a beautiful system, it's yeah, I really love that. And I really helped liberate a lot of people that are, over that age group. They're like, I don't really resonate with my birth chart, even, not in the tropical, not in even the Vedic. Like we go into the D9 and they're like, yes, that is what I'm living in this present moment now.
Mm-hmm. Very
Mm.
cool.
Yeah.
So the ninth house, you would call it what, the house of destiny?
Yeah. That's considered your destiny chart in Vedic astrology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Your
Very
destiny,
cool.
house of destiny. Yeah. And there's a destiny point too, which is also like a really sweet little, yeah, when the moon goes into that point, you pretty much, it's kind of like I could predict like lucky days for you, if you look at the destiny point, we kind of track when the moon's there.
Wow.
So there's a lot to play with it. I mean, it's
Sounds like
it's fun.
an 80s prime time, like Dynasty, the House of Destiny.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and I started really playfully. My friend who runs this shop called Gifty Kitty in Portland, excuse me, it's a shop that's just like all cat gift items and it's like built out. And she's an installation artist, so it's like super built out and fun. And sometimes they have live kittens in there, you can adopt it. Anyway, she wanted somebody to do cat astrology, like astrology predictions. And I was like, well, I've wanted to do predictions, like little, moon cycle based predictions, instead of monthly, I do them monthly, which is where the word came from anyways, month. And so I give a predictive kind of concept for each one of the constellations every moon, and then she takes them and throws them into Chat GPT, and Cat puns them up, and she has them on her site. So that's a fun thing that you can go to Starbody Earth, starbodyearth.com/moon magic, and each moon cycle you can look at your prediction. And in Vedic also, your sun sign isn't just whatever, everybody that's born that month has that sun sign. So it's really based off your ascendant and your moon cycle, what your personality is and what you'd want to look at if you looked at those predictions.
Right.
Yeah. So, but that's fun. Yeah. That's a fun thing.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of information. That's a huge information, check in. Does Mary, Jody, Lana, do any of you have questions or, anything that you want to look at with this?
Well, yeah, I would like to ask a couple of questions so I can understand better. But since you brought up the moon or the moon or whatever you're saying, I was just thinking in my mind, um, what about the day of the week that you were born? like, somebody was born on a Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, does it have anything to do with, the day you were born of the week?
Oh, no, it doesn't really. I would say it's more based off, what's more important is what cycle the moon was in on the day you were born. So were you on like a waxing moon or a waning moon or a full moon or a new moon? That's more important than the day.
Oh, okay. And my other question that I've always heard people talk about houses, and you mentioned houses, the different houses. Now, I don't understand when people talk about houses, what they mean. Could you give an explanation of your understanding of what the houses are?
Sure. So the or the chart itself is divided into 12 parts. And so there's 12 houses. And so as you kind of go through this progression from when you were like basically wherever the horizon line was in relationship to the elliptical, that's where your first house would start, because that's kind of where you start your journey. So the first house is the house of your self, and then it's your inner personality, and then you go into like siblings and your talents and gifts, and then you go into your house of home, and then it's like, it just continues to progress into relationships, and then how you show up in the outer external world. Once you get above the horizon, it's like all your inner stuff in the first 6 houses, and then it's like how you express that externally in the outer houses. So from the 7th house on, it's kind of like
So you
relationships, career, how you express yourself professionally or out in the world in your profession. The 11th house is kind of, deemed how you show up in community. And then the 12th house has to do a lot with like moksha or liberation. Like what do you letting go, and how do you
So how
release?
long does it take you to go through a house? One house? How much time period is one house?
Okay, this is tricky because, so it would be, it just depends on what planet you're looking at. Because, for example, the moon goes through a house in 2 days, but then Venus is going to take however, I don't know, sometimes 3 weeks to get more to like get through a house. Saturn's going to take years. So it depends on which planetary influence. So it's all about a kind of dynamism between the houses and the relationships. And like your natal chart is a picture, it's a snapshot of where the stars and planets were, or which constellations the planets were in where you were born.
Mhm.
And then you have the like moving, the ever moving kind of dynamic present moment now. So again, like you have these cycles. And so if you look at the picture of like today plus your natal chart, you can assess them. But then there's like the movement that's going on still of, the cycles of how these planets are moving around the elliptical. So it's a very dynamic, just as we are.
So, and they're moving around the elliptical, but they're also spiraling through time space, through the precession of the equinoxes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, the same thing. It's the same thing.
So
Yeah.
are the houses, so it's really like looking at the horizon line where house one starts. So
For your present moment, right? Because if you took a snapshot of like today, the horizon line is going to be in a different place, and that house one starts in a different place. So that's what I'm saying. When you cross reference and you look at two different snapshots together, there's actually crossover between the houses, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And that's how they map together, is because we're looking at it based on your natal chart. We're going to take the the um, the current snapshot and twist it until the ascendants match up, and that's how you see the dynamics at play.
And the houses, do they play in a similar way in Western astrology and Vedic astrology?
Yeah, the houses have the same meanings
Mhm.
across Western and Vedic.
Well, that's
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah,
So
planets have the same meaning, houses have the same meaning, constellations have the same meaning. It's literally just it turns at 23 degrees, and there's just so much more in-depth information in the Vedic system than there is in the Western astrology system, period.
So my other question was, the moon goes through the entire ecliptic in 28 days, right?
About
So
here,
that's
like it's
27, 28.
27, 28, sometimes
Yeah.
29. It's variable because the moon is unpredictable.
Yeah.
Just like the feminine principle. She
So
changes.
so each one is a nakshatra. Each segment would be one nakshatra, right? That the moon
Yes.
goes through.
Yes.
So
Yeah, so
so
if we did
2
a
days.
nakshatra study, we could do
Mhm.
like a nakshatra a day.
Yeah, you put all together, it's quite confusing.
Yeah, I don't suppose any more so than any system that's mapping the cosmos.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I mean it takes me years, and I'm trying to explain years of understanding in 1 hour. So
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, it's very condensed. But I did my best.
I think you do. I think that's great. You know, it really gives us another perspective, right? To look at how we are operating in this now time, like
Yeah.
within Earth, our path, our purpose. And I think the more tools we have to understand, then we can say, okay, I can see how like these astrological aspects are playing. But again, there's always, always, always the energy of free will, right?
Mhm.
That we're also applying into this. So using that the chart as almost like a springboard to give you more information about the way the energies are playing right now will also help with that. I don't know, free will choice to you know, whether you're creating something or whether you're grounding something or organizing something. You know, I think that's helpful.
Yeah.
So
Like I've
basically
been
the chart,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Basically the chart is giving you like a map when you're born, sort of. But then your free will plays in, and you can always change what that chart is being given to you at birth, correct?
You can't change you can't change your karma or your natal chart. But
You
you can work
can't.
with it. You cannot, but you can either work with it or be in resistance to it. And what happens is when you're working with that particular life path map, things are easier. They're just easier, you know, and um we can't really change the like pace with which our lessons come through as much as people would love it to be different than that. We have I don't, at this point, I'm 100% believer in a destiny path, you know, like this is that we have that is, and the free will gives us the right to work against it or with it. So that's how you change it. It's like, how far out of the loop of alignment do you want to, what's the traveling that you want to do? How far off do you want to go to come back to center? You know, it's kind of like that.
So the further
And
out you go, the harsher the karmic backlash you'll get, correct?
yes, the course correct is going to be harder.
Mhm.
Exactly. And then, but then I think that mixed with the dynamic of where the stars are in their placements, sometimes the current present moment now and its interaction with your birth chart is doing the pushing out of you to go out farther away from your alignment. So you have that. And sometimes like looking at that dynamic between those two things or those period of time plus your natal chart is helpful when you're going through something really hard, because you're like, well, this is why. I mean, I have this, the Saturn in the sky at the present moment is in direct square with my natal chart, and they're just going, nah, 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 nah. So you're just getting kind of beat down. At least it's helpful. Sometimes it's helpful or comforting for people to just like know, okay, well, that's why that is. And then I can have more grace, more acceptance for the difficulty or the challenge.
Can I ask a question? Just in relation to what you're saying there, Melanie, about the change and about your natal chart, and you mentioned earlier about a Saturn return. And I'm wondering, does that happen every 29 years or something like that, or every 19 years? And is the purpose kind of that it sort of really makes you have a kind of a review of your life, and that it sort of brings you back on track to sort of see where exactly you're going? It's kind of how I experience a Saturn return.
Yes.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, it's like
it's quite a big thing in one's life. How often does it happen? Sorry.
So that Saturn it takes about 28 years to get around to where it was in its placement in your natal chart. So that's the cycles. Every 28 years, you kind of have it come back to where you were born and come to 0 point. But oftentimes you could like cut that, because every time the Saturn goes square to your square or opposite your natal chart, you also have some pretty big life moments. So, every, like people talk about a 7-year cycle, right? Because it's 7 times. So when you get those 7-year cycles and you go, okay, wow, that was some kind of completion. And then you had another, like even people talk about a 13-year cycle. That would be when Saturn's in opposition in your chart. And
so no matter where it is, really, it's quite an important planet in terms of your journey. I suppose they all are.
Saturn's kind of considered the karmic deliverer. It's the one that puts the barriers in place so that you can have your breakthroughs. It's like the shell of the egg, right? You can't have that inner process and development if you don't have a container. And then at one point we grow out of that container and need to like push our way through, and that's sometimes painful. So that it gets a bad rap, but I mean I love Saturn.
Well, it's probably good, you see, in terms of that push and pull that it sort of puts us through, that as you say, it gets us to push through the barriers sometimes, the barriers it creates for us to push through.
Yeah. And then you have your friend Jupiter, who's like ever expanding, ever asking you to keep growing and learning. And, so that's another planet we focus on, is because Jupiter's, considered really benevolent in that it's the life force energy that wants you to keep growing and stretching and pushing out. So that's another good thing to look at in your chart, is where the Jupiter and Saturn interact, how they interact with each other, because sometimes they can be at odds with one another and sometimes they can be really supportive of each other.
And the other question I have for you is, and I nearly know the answer to this, but I presume it's really important to know the time of your birth if you're getting a chart done.
Yeah, and especially in Vedic astrology. And there are people out there, I'm not quite at this level, but some really professional folks who've been doing this, and this is like their main thing they do. They only do it. They can actually help hone in on your birth time based on your life events.
All right, I was just going to ask you that, because I'm not sure at the time of my birth. And I'm wondering, how could I get that kind of more exactly? And you would think just based on your timeline events.
Yeah, I think that the really pro people who do this, and I could find out who those folks are, but I don't know off the top of my hand right now, or my head. There's a woman out there. If I looked at like Vedic astrology books, I would be able to remember her name. But
Okay.
anyways, she looks at like, you know, maybe you had a big life event like your parent passing, or you had, you know, a big move, or you had a big career change. Like these things can all be mapped out pretty nicely, and
Pretty easily, yeah.
they can kind
Okay.
of, yeah, almost triangulate your time of birth.
Okay. Well, maybe sometime I might drop you a text or something or an SMS just to see if you ever had the name of that lady for me.
Sure.
Somebody did calculate it for me at 5:55 in the evening, but I'm not so sure that that's exactly what it was. You know, it mind you, it does fit well with my life events, but I would love to know, and there's no way that I can find out really now at this stage because it wasn't, I think, accurately recorded. And there's just
Right.
one more question. The
Yes.
last question, and it might be too scientific, Melanie.
Okay.
Um, it's a question about black holes and how they affect space and time. And I know you were saying earlier that the constellation of Virgo is a very big constellation, and that it takes the movement through that constellation takes longer than the smaller constellations. But black holes can slow down time. And I'm
Mm.
just wondering, I suppose as we move through, because we're ever moving energetically, and the sky
Mhm.
is ever moving, and everything is ever moving. And I'm just wondering in terms of that movement as our charts, sort of go towards the black holes. I suppose that might slow things down and might have an effect on us. And I'm wondering if that's part of astrology at all, or is that just a kind of science, really?
Oh, I'd really have to sit and contemplate that, because, you know, what that's bringing up for me is how our twin galaxy Andromeda and our galaxy are kind of moving closer together, partially because of, you know, that center point in
Okay.
Pegasus. So I'd really have to think about that. I don't know how much that would affect the placement of the fixed stars in the elliptical, because, you know, the
Yeah.
information that's coming through with this particular system is really based on those constellations and those stars and the information that was received from them for the Vedics. So if those placements change in our relation, because this is all really from our perspective on Earth, right? You know, that
Yes. Yes.
this is the ring of the elliptical is what we're experiencing, and that's the movement that we're experiencing. That's the horizon, that's the east-west horizon line. That's what
Mm.
we're kind of spinning on. That's the axis point we're spinning on. So if that were to shift, of course the system would shift to different stellar knowledge realities. But I don't think that's going to happen for at least I think our life, we're good for
No,
this lifetime.
no.
But probably, you know, let's look into like 300, you know, 1,000 years in the future. I think we might be like receiving different star codes.
Right. Right. Well, it was
Hmm.
just a question.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was, if it would factor into an astrology chart or not. And can't see, I suppose, really how it would, because we can't predict the black holes. We don't know
Hmm.
where they're going to appear. We
Hmm.
only know what's there when we're born, and then they may occur at different times in our life, and we just don't know where they're going to happen,
Hmm.
really.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also encourage people to get out to dark sky if you can somewhere, you know, because unfortunately we have as much light pollution as we do on this planet. But I've been lucky enough to be in incredible places in the world. Hawaii is one of them, where, man, you can just see the whole systems out there, and to really let your consciousness be guided to a star that's calling to you. I often get a little blinky blink, you know, and it's not from the
Mm.
effect on the horizon. It's actually doing something in the sky, and I'll just lay and meditate with that and receive, and then get my Sky View app out and see what star that actually is, and what its name is, what type of star it is, and just kind of gather information from all the ways we know how.
Yeah, that's beautiful actually, because I would notice that too, that a star would sort of blinky blink and wonder what it was. But yeah, I didn't actually think about it as calling to me, but it is a lovely idea and a lovely thought.
Yeah,
Thanks, Melanie, anyway.
just like being with the tree, you know, like if you just want to sit with the tree and just kind of be with it and meditate with it and receive from it, you know, like we can do that with the stars as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
find it very interesting as you were talking about the Syrian return coinciding with the Saturn return
Mm.
on the 52nd birthday with the galactic, the 13 moon Mayan, calendar. You have that same signature. Yeah, I think starting again, right? Starting from zero, looking at what you've done, what's completed, and now where you're going from that point. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I know, right? I had a beautiful experience with a woman. I mean, I would love to make it to my double Syrian return, you know, like come on 104, right? Like that would be awesome. But I did have a beautiful experience with a woman who is a Qigong grandmaster in San Francisco, and I came into her reality on her at her third Saturn return. So she was in her 80s, and it was she had gone through a life death rebirth, even, you know, in a hospitalization, a standard surgery that kind of went awry, and I had met her right after that, and it was powerful. It's a potent time, you know, those moments where we get those rebirth energies. We get to kind of shed a lot and carry forward with what we've known in a stronger, more concentrated way. That's what it feels like those times. Get to like forge the sword, you know?
Melanie, I have another question for you.
Sure.
You just mentioned that receiving star codes. I was wondering if you can explain what you mean by you that we receive star codes, and
Yeah.
kind of, do you mean the planets, or do you mean stars from further away?
Yeah. I'm meaning from stars further away. Like our natal chart is a map of these, like the planets are in alignment with these stars because it's almost like a calling card. It's going, I want that frequency. And I want that, you know, that's part of what is going to support me in this life path and what I'm here to do in this current reality. So, yeah, to find out more about those
So what are you
stars.
saying, that the stars are depending on which placement, when you were born, that the stars are in the sky, um, you're receiving the codes from those particular stars when you were born?
Yeah.
And is that constant coming in, or now we're in a different place from where we were born? This is really confusing.
Yeah. So where these planets were in the sky when you were born are like calling cards for the stellar frequencies that make up who you are. So that like this natal chart is like a key code to your complex vibrational profile, if you will.
So, from my understanding of what you're saying, right, when you're born, there's a snapshot, right? It's like things are always moving, but when you're born, there's a snapshot that's taken of these particular stars in a particular constellation. So, for example, going back to my ascendant, which is in the belly of Cancer, looking from the Vedic perspective, the star system that is in alignment with my ascendant is that belly of Cancer energy. So that's informing the energy of my ascendant, just like the sun would be in the constellation of Aries in the Vedic astrology. So Aries, the energy of Aries, is combining with the energy of the sun to give me a certain type of energy for that what house, or for that alignment.
Yeah, like the planets all have different functions. So that sun, like you're saying, is what lights up the whole system, right? And your ascendant, where the horizon was when you were born in the snapshot, that is like your primary energy that you're kind of, it's like a primary energy. It's almost like that you holding the space for the nursery energy, right? That's like something that's just like it's very much who you are. And then you have your life path is south and north node, right? And those kind of have their own frequency based on where they are in the ring. Your Mars is kind of how you push, how you push through things, like how you forge your way, how you move. Your Venus is like that, how you hold that goddess space, how you hold the feminine. Like I said, the Jupiter's expansion and Saturn's, putting the limitations on so that you can have your challenges and your breakthroughs. And
So each of those planets is going to have a signature based on the constellation that it's aligned with.
correct.
Yeah. So it gives you, your own, it's like a recipe.
It's
Lana.
a recipe.
Yeah, I know you do a lot of baking and a lot of cooking and such. So you can think of it as a recipe, right? Maybe I thought I was beef stew, but really I'm lamb stew. With a little bit of spice here and spice there. And the way that it informs what ingredients are going into your particular makeup, your particular life path. Does that make sense? More sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, Tanya.
Right.
I like the way you put in the recipe,
Yeah,
because then it becomes a little clearer, because all the energies from those stars in your birth chart when you were born becomes part of what you will be, the energies of what you're gathering and receiving, and that's how you will be in this lifetime, right? Am I
Yeah.
explaining it
Yes,
correctly?
exactly. It's a recipe for who you are.
It's a combination of the different energies.
Mm-hmm. Sweetness. And by the
Yes.
way, I love the image that you have on your Zoom because it looks like your shadow is laughing. It's got a big smile.
Oh, yeah.
Do you see the bird in the bottom?
Let's see. Start talking again.
It's right below.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
Very
Oh my
good.
gosh, sweetness.
The bird there, yeah. Well, it looks
Fun.
like a bird.
Yeah. Very
You see the
cool.
beak and the feathers and stuff, like the wing. You see the
Mhm.
wing and the, yeah.
Amazing.
Sweet. Well, I think that's all I have for today.
Thanks so
Well,
much
thank
for
you.
the download of information. It's very much appreciated. Thanks for taking the time out
Yeah,
for us
my
all
pleasure.
yeah,
today.
it was
Maybe
great, Melanie. Yeah, thank you.
maybe you can
Oh.
tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, sure. So starbodyearth.com is my website, and if you click on the tab for services, you can book a reading right there. So I actually have quite a bit of time up until solstice. Some things got cleared out of the way, so I'm actually promoting some readings, and maybe I'll put a little discount code as a link to when you post the video, Tanya, so people
Okay.
who watch the video can get a little discount code for an initial reading.
Awesome. Well, thanks so
Thanks, that's
much
great.
for sharing with us today. I really
Yes, thank
appreciate
you.
you. And anything else that was coming up, Mary or Lana?
I just want to say that Melanie has a new haircut.
Oh yeah. I know. It's just like
I
crazy
think you had
morning here.
longer hair the last time you were on with
I
us.
did.
Yeah.
I did. I shaved it all off last fall, or like the almost pre-winter time, like about November. Just shaved it all off for the first time I've ever done that, but it just felt right. And now I'm just letting it grow out. I haven't had a haircut since.
It looks nice. I like
I did it.
the rugged look.
Thanks. I did a whole treatment on me. You probably stopped the recording now for just coming in the first.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
But
all. Thanks, Melanie.
yeah, you're welcome. I did this treatment.